and welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie, and as it's December, I have a bunch of videos that I do every single time around this year, and this is one of them. Today we're going to talk about my favourite, most used Oracle decks of 2019. Now there are 5 that I want to talk about, which I suppose isn't a huge amount, but I've kind of, I don't know, got in a bit of a groove with these Oracle decks. And just a heads up, I know some of you don't really like seeing the cards with me just holding them up. You prefer the camera pointing down. And every year around this time, I do a full update of my deck collection video. So soon, stay tuned, there will be a video of me showing you every single deck that I own. And I will kind of walk through some of the cards in that more face down way. So keep an eye out for that, and subscribe if you haven't already and you want to see that video so you don't miss it. I've also done other videos on most of these decks, so I'll leave links in the description below if you want to have a better look at them there. Also, funnily enough, I feel like my favourite Oracle deck has kind of switched. It's still by the same creator, it's just a different deck, which we will talk about soon. So we'll start with the deck that is actually newest to me. It is the Sacred Creators Oracle by Chris Ann. This one I got in a trade, which was pretty exciting because it's a deck that I've kind of looked at on and off for a long time, but shipping to Australia was just like ridiculous. And so I could just never like justify. It's already quite an expensive deck, but the shipping on top of that was just like, no, I couldn't do it. But getting a trade was very exciting. So I could finally kind of have a bit of a go, have a bit of a play. Now it is a really, really lovely deck. It's very simple. It's basically an affirmation deck more than anything. Just really artsy and fun and beautiful. The guidebook is really cool. And I will say that I use it, but I don't like read the whole thing because it's like 3 or 4 pages per card. So I'll kind of just skim over it and see what pops out to me. I don't use this deck on its own, really, I would say. I tend to use it as more that affirmation card at the end of another reading, which I found quite fun. I still wouldn't say this is like a deck that I love. I don't really feel strongly emotionally about it at all, but I just have found it quite useful and fun to play around with. I do like that the cards kind of correlate to tarot cards. So, you know, like the 2 corresponds with the High Priestess. So that's kind of fun, something a bit unique. I think there have been different versions of this deck, and I think I have the first one, but I'm not exactly sure. I think one of the big appeals of this deck at least is the colours. They're just really, really pretty. And I do love, like, they feel very intentional for the meaning of the card. And of course, just like the way the writing's done and, you know, the little kind of sketchy images just kind of really add to it. I get this card a lot. It's really fun and simple, which makes it, I think, very versatile. I was kind of not really sure how I'd use it. I just knew that I wanted to try. And I suppose, yeah, I've found it definitely more useful as a secondary deck, as something to go alongside of another reading. It is a really lovely deck, like everything about it is just beautiful quality. Chris Ann definitely invested in that. I do find it a bit hard to riffle shuffle, but I don't really, so I just don't, basically. It's all just really simple, but even though it's an affirmation deck, it's not just the sort of affirmations that we see in every other affirmation deck. It is, obviously, the name of it is Sacred Creators Oracle, so it is kind of skewed to the creator, and I would almost say like the professional creator, someone who uses their creativity in terms of like making money, part of their job, often entrepreneurs, which I don't really identify with, although I suppose there's an element of that in terms of my YouTube creation and content creation and stuff. I don't really feel like an artsy person, so I wasn't sure how much this deck like would work for me. If I would feel kind of like alienated from the meanings and the messages, if they would feel a little bit like they don't apply to me. For example, that market yourself card. But the way that the book is written and the way that I've found my experience with this card is that even when they do kind of feel a bit more businessy, some of the messages, I can still very easily apply them to myself. For example, like the Bravely Market Yourself card. I don't know, for me just kind of means presenting yourself in a certain way and not being afraid to like advocate for yourself and speak highly of yourself and let people know what you're capable of. You know what I mean? Like, I think even though it has that kind of skew to it, that lens to it of I don't know if it's just business, but it feels like that. So I'm gonna say that. Even though it kind of has that lens of, you know, a business owner, like a professional creator, I don't think you have to be in order to enjoy this deck. The next deck is the one I probably used the least this year, but I've had a lot of fun playing around with it, and it was a gift from Veronica. Thank you. It's ridiculously generous. It's the Victorian Flower Oracle. And this is kind of the sister deck to one of my all-time favorite tarot decks, the Fantastic Menagerie by Bubba Studios. And it's just incredible. I did have the Floret Oracle for quite a while, which I feel like did satisfy like my desire for this, but there is something really kind of pretty incredible about actually having the real thing. Not that the other one's not real, they're two different. I hope you understand what I mean. There's something really special about having like the actual companion deck. And it does feel quite different to the Floret Oracle. I think it has a sharper tongue. I don't know whether that's because of like the keywords that have been chosen or just, I don't know, the vibe of the thing. I've definitely found this a little bit harder hitting than I did the Floret Oracle. It has more of that salty flavor of the Fantastic Menagerie, which is like its biggest charm, I think. Like the Fantastic Menagerie makes me laugh out loud. I adore it. And so the Floret Oracle I found more gentle and sweet and affirming. This one kind of goes a little bit more along the lines of the sassiness of the Fantastic Menagerie. And I don't know, I've really enjoyed it. I actually have found myself, I thought that I would use this almost solely in conjunction with the Fantastic Menagerie, but I've actually found myself really enjoying using it on its own. And I tend to use this in 3-card spreads, or just 3 cards, which again is not something I do very often. I tend to, with Oracle, I don't know, I just tend to draw 1 card, either on its own or as like a secondary element to a tarot spread. Whereas this, I found myself using on its own in a 3-card spread, which is, yeah, just kind of not how I use oracles. So that's been really fun, is kind of playing around with an oracle deck in a different way. So I found using this deck actually quite exciting. And I don't know, just having like a little set is always fun. But this one in particular was kind of a bit of a dream come true. And so I've had a lot of fun with this one this year. Next up is a deck I'm pretty sure made it to my list last year. It's the Awakened Soul Oracle by Ethony. Ethony did send this to me. I don't know whether she told me it was for review or if she just sent it to me, but I did do a review. And as I said in that review, I really like this deck. I think it just feels like the sort of deck that you can use every day. As with any deck, it's not perfect, but it just feels like such a solid all-rounder deck for me. And in fact, I think it's so usable and accessible that that's part of the big reason why I didn't give it to my mum, but like I share it with my mum. Basically, we take turns. So she had it for, I don't know, the better part of like 6 or 8 months at her house, but I would still like use it when I went to her house, or we'd use it together. But then after a while I was like, hey, actually I'm really missing it. Can I have it back for a while? So it kind of like floats between our houses. And like mum does like drawing a card from a deck every now and then, but she's not kind of like embedded in the world of tarot and oracles. She just likes drawing a card and reading what the message is and seeing how that can apply to her life or what she can do that day, if that makes sense. And so I suppose that demonstrates the versatility of this deck. But someone like me who uses cards a lot, I can still get a lot out of this deck, and I find it very proactive and directive and helpful. And someone like my mum who just wants to draw a card every now and then for the day can also get a lot out of this deck. I just think it's a very grounded, practical deck, which is just really cool. And it's also really fun. As lovely as the cards are, and they really are, I love the cards, I think a big strong suit of this deck is the guidebook and the way that it's structured. And I'll leave a link to the review that I did down below if you want to learn more about that. But there's just so many different things that are included that make this deck, I think that's part of why it's so versatile and helpful. Now the next deck is a very special one. This is a deck I had a long time ago, but then for some reason I didn't have it anymore. I don't remember whether I sold it or traded it or what went on. But I didn't have it for a little while, and then one of you kindly offered to, did you send it to me or did we trade? I can't remember, but I was very excited either way. And this has kind of, I don't know, it just re-entered my heart. I have gotten a lot of use out of this deck. Actually, I think that's part of why I got rid of it at one point. Oh, it's the Australian Wildflower reading cards by Cheralyn Darcy. I don't think I actually said that. Great job, Katey. Hashtag professional YouTuber. I think I felt like at the time this wasn't universal enough. So when I got Cheralyn Darcy's other deck, her Wildflower reading cards, or just her flower reading cards, the ones in the yellow box, that is more international, there's the flowers all over the world. I think I felt like that was more, I don't know, just it was broader, I could use it for more people, I don't know, I think I liked the idea of that more at the time. But more recently, well I suppose about 18 months ago, a year ago, I missed this a lot, and I appreciate more than ever decks and books that correspond to my local environment, to Australia. And I think because so many decks that are animal based or plant based, they include plants and animals that I just am not familiar with. And so that makes it very hard to connect with on an intuitive level, or just on any other level that doesn't leave me relying on the guidebook more than I want to. And plus there's just something so wonderful about being like, hey, I know that plant. Hey, I know what that plant does at different seasons. I know what that plant smells like. Do you know what I mean? There's something really special about that, and I don't get that with a lot of decks. And so having the opportunity to do that with this deck is really special. And so I found that this is a deck I don't use all the time, but I take it with me on trips. So when Mum and I went to Seven Sisters Festival earlier this year, on trips that I've done, you know, whether we go to the bush or up a mountain or whatever, when we're away for more than one night, I tend to take this deck. And I just love having it. And kind of as with the Awakened Soul Oracle, a lot of the time Mum and I will read with this deck together. When we were away for the weekend for the Seven Sisters, each morning I would draw a card and Mum would draw a card, and we'd read each other's message and try and interpret it for each other. And that was such a wonderful way to start the day. I felt like I was connecting with myself, with my mum, and with the environment, it was just really special. It was wonderful. So this deck has been a true gift. I've grown to love and appreciate it so much more this second time round. And finally, deck number 5 is the Saltwater reading cards. Now, I've had this deck for a couple of years. Laura Bowen did send it to me, but not for review. She sent it to me as a gift because I talk about her other decks so much. And basically, the Dreamtime reading cards has for a long time kind of been like my oracle deck. I absolutely love it, and I still do. And I always liked this deck, but it just was never on the same level as the Dreamtime reading cards for me. This year though, and especially like last summer, I'm entering into summer again now, but last summer, I just like fell head over heels in love with this deck. Absolutely in love. And over the last few years, this has been a deck that's been very summery for me. But this year, it kind of just wasn't limited to summer. It was very much present in my life during summer, especially high summer, so like January, February, March, like when it's super fucking hot. But it didn't go away at the end of March. It kind of just hung around, which was really exciting to me because it hadn't done that before. I hadn't wanted to use it outside of summer. And so this is the oracle deck I've used more by far and away, like a lot more than any of the other decks. I've used this deck so much. It might even be my most used deck, Tarot and Oracle of the year. I just love it. It's so freaking vibrant and gorgeous. It's just insane. I absolutely love it. Laura Bowen's guidebooks, as always, they're wonderful, but you don't need them, especially once you've spent a bit of time with these cards. I'm also familiar with a lot of the animals and experiences and landscapes represented, partly because I've spent so much time with this deck, but also because a lot of it is Australian based. I don't think it doesn't feel exclusively Australian because, you know, lots of places have oceans. But I think some of it, like mangroves, I'm very familiar with because I've lived in the tropics up north. So we had a lot of mangroves like around Cairns and stuff, and they stink. But they're also wonderful, wonderful environments that house a lot of life. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is my favorite oracle deck now. Like, it's always been one that I've loved, but this year I think it became number one for me, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, I've used this deck a lot in 2019 and I don't see it going away. It kind of faded a little bit in winter, But I mean, having said that, my tarot practice in general faded a little bit around that time. But already I'm feeling this deck coming back out, and I'm really excited about that. I absolutely love it. It's just so gorgeous and such a fun deck to work with. I always just feel really pumped and invigorated when I pull a card. So those are my most used Oracle decks of 2019, the Oracle decks that really stand out to me in terms of my experience with them and wanting to use them and using them a lot throughout the year. All of them are really quite different, and all of them have given me something different, but all of them have just been really fun and wonderful. As always, a big massive thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. You guys are fabulous. Thank you for making these videos a lot easier and more fun. As always, I love talking to you over in the Discord as well. A big extra special thank you to Tracy, Timmerman, Laurie and Lynette Brown. You guys are great and I really appreciate you. That is it for this video though. I will be back soon with my top tarot decks of 2019. I think there's a few more on that list than there were on this one. If you would like to share with me either in a video response or in the comments below about your favorite Oracle decks of the year or your most used Oracle decks, those two they are different but they intersect. So I don't know, interpret that however you'd like. But I'd love to hear from you if you'd like to share. And until next time, so much love. Bye.